Well, good evening, WNBA and LA Sparks fans. Happy Memorial Day weekend, and welcome in, folks, to the LA Sparks 365, your 24/7 365 comprehensive home of the WNBA and your two-time WNBA champion LA Sparks. Here, folks, a bit late tonight for the post-game show following the 12:30 contest. Had a few things to do at the house here, down here. Enjoyed some baseball tournaments and a few other things included. But it is, folks, Sparks 365, the post-game show here on the LA Sparks 365 network alongside Chris Amanci at the Heart Studios up in Anaheim, California. I'm Cal McClure joining you folks here from Studio 171 in San Diego. Chris, we had a week off, basically. I had a bit of a raspy throat and a voice problem, had a bit of a meltdown last week. So how'd the off time go, man? We took as much time off as the Sparks did to play their next game to, I don't know, until today. So how's it going?
Nothing much. Just hanging here, just watching the Sparks replay game, and something else happened yesterday, which is right there.
Get to that possibly off camera when it doesn't matter to be live on the air. But folks, we folks apologize for that for last week. Again, I was dealing with a bit of a raspy, sore, itchy throat last week, and I didn't really want to push the vocal cords past the limit. So we took the week off, basically, and come back here, of course, following a big 21-point Sparks win at home, their first home win of the season at the big office. The Sparks annihilate the San Antonio Stars 83-62. The game recap courtesy of Curtis Zupek of WNBA.com. Sparks part owner Magic Johnson wasn't on hand to see his new team win their first home game, but he would have been proud of their dominant third quarter by Candace Parker on Sunday. Parker scored 23 points, and Christy Tolliver added 15 as the Sparks beat the San Antonio Stars 83-62. Parker scored 12 of the Sparks' first 15 points of the third quarter, and the Sparks at 2-1 avoided their worst start since they began 0-3 in 2010. It was their first home win since they were purchased back on February 5th by a group that is led by former NBA star Johnson and LA Dodgers controlling owner Mark R. Walter. Johnson, of course, attended the Sparks home opener on May 18th, which was a loss to the Phoenix Mercury. Nneka Ogwumike, in a quote, says, "It's always exciting when you get a home win, and with this new ownership, I think it's a testament to the change that we're trying to make. We're trying to identify ourselves as a stronger kind of team. New ownership is a wonderful act to follow, and also a wonderful organization to be within. Unfortunately, we lost when Magic was here last time, but I'm sure he'll be at more games and he'll be able to see us play like we did today." Close quote. Of course, Ogwumike returned from a lower back strain injury and scored 11 points with 9 rebounds. Gia Perkins led the Stars, who are now 2-2 with 17 points, and Danielle Robinson, Becky Hammond, and Kayla McBride each had 8. San Antonio was going for its first 3-game winning streak since it won 12 in a row in 2012. Parker's 12-point third quarter included a fake pass, left-hand floater, and turnaround jumper, and Lavender stretched the lead to 15 on a bank shot before San Antonio closed to a 61-54 after the third quarter. Parker also had 6 assists. From the MVP, Candace Parker, she said it just comes within. As talented as our team is, I think I just look for what's there, whether it's spread the floor or kick out or set some good screens. It's just being active, and I think that's what's going to change from game to game is how aggressive I have to be. In the third quarter, I saw that I had to be a little bit more aggressive and take control a little bit more. Close quote. Parker effectively sealed it with a three-pointer from the right side to give the Sparks a 71-58 lead with 4.5 minutes to play in the game. San Antonio did not get within a single digit deficit the rest of the way. Perkins made consecutive jumpers at the end of the third quarter and another to start the fourth, but the Sparks ran off the next 6 baskets. San Antonio head coach Dan Hughes said that I thought the energy we exerted to get back in and unfortunately left us a little bit tired. There's going to be runs in the game, but we had to exert a lot of energy to get ourselves back into the game, and I think it showed up in the fourth quarter. Close quote. The Stars pulled to within 3, 41-38 at halftime after it had erased a 16-point first quarter deficit. The Stars went on a 17-4 run, finished by McBride's three-pointer that gave San Antonio its first lead at 36-35. Hammond then made back-to-back layups, and McBride also scored on a jumper during the run. LA got the lead back on Parker's basket in the paint, and Ogwumike followed up with a sideline jumper. The Sparks took a 13-0 lead to start the game and pushed it to 23-7 on a bucket by Parker. They made 12 of 19 field goal attempts in the first quarter for a 27-15 lead after the Stars had missed 11 of their first 13 shots. LA Sparks guard Candace Wiggins sat out the game with a swollen left knee. Well, Chris, I think this was, necessarily not really a fork in the road, Chris, but a game that the Sparks needed to have. Was a game like this on the schedule was a cupcake win, up there to a 13-0 start. Everyone was on fire tonight, a bit more relaxed. There wasn't as many nerves as there was last Sunday against Phoenix at home in the first game at home. Chris, what do you take away from today's game where the Sparks simply owned the Stars tonight, when beating them, Chris, above all by 21 points tonight, 83-62?
A great team win by the Sparks. Like in the first half, they struggled at first when they went off a big old run, but then it came in the second quarter. They let the Stars get back in it, but didn't let up, and Candace Parker did her thing and to lead the Sparks to a victory.
Like I told you off camera, man, that Candace Parker, whose jersey's up there, man, if you can see it, folks, it's up there. That is one bad woman. And someone, Chris, is going to have to literally pry that MVP award out of her grasp this season. Now, I know Maya Moore, Chris, is the early favorite, but until someone can pry that trophy out of her hands, she is MVP Parker until someone does that. Because, Chris, reevaluating that game, okay, we know it's a 13-0 run to start the game, Chris. The Stars battle their way back, and it would take a lead for one possession, go back down to the Sparks, Chris, of course. That runaway train, Chris, is all fired and engined and taking control, Chris, by Candace Parker in that third quarter, Chris, because she had 6 points in the first half, man, 17 in the second quarter, in the second half, Chris, to basically put the icing on the cake for this contest today, man. But other than that, though, Chris, how about Nneka Ogwumike? Her first game back from her lower back strain suffered on the 16th in Seattle, sat out last week to get some treatment, and of course, Chris, that long week off between games, giving her more time to recuperate, Chris. And it looked like she didn't skip a beat at all. She was, 11 points, 9 rebounds, Chris. Probably didn't want to push it too hard, but I mean, she went hard, but didn't try to go anything over because of her back. How do you think she played tonight? I mean, coming off that back issue.
I think she looked pretty good out there with the baskets, and looked pretty good out there.
Chris, let's go back and revisit the first quarter, where basically, Chris, it looked like it was a role reversal or the tables turned from the Sunday home game against Phoenix, Chris, where the Sparks taken to them, in the first quarter, being down by a substantial lead. But then, Chris, how about the Sparks kind of turning that table and giving the Stars a taste of their own medicine and putting them down by 13 early in the first quarter, Chris? I mean, basically, man, kind of compare and contrast. What was different in the first quarter of today than what occurred last Sunday against the Phoenix Mercury?
I think the Sparks were nervous out there. First home game of the season since a dreaded off season. Didn't know what they're gonna do. Either folded or been up in the Bay Area. Magic Johnson was there, trying to impress them a lot, and I think just pressed really too hard and got too affected.
Chris, I've said it a lot about, Diana Taurasi missing a shot in the first 5 minutes of the quarter, Chris. I don't think anybody on the Sparks, at least what I saw, because I watched the game, folks, courtesy of my trusty phone. Thank you very much, Time Warner Cable Sportsnet, for your tremendous app that you can watch live games on your phone when you're on the go. And Chris, I thought personally it's like, this is a completely different team from last week. Now, yes, there was butterflies, there was nerves, there was, still sent down the spine when you see Maddox sitting along the baseline at your first home game after the off season. But today, Chris, it looked like there was, the team was settled, relaxed. Someone Chris probably put, one of the keep calm and carry on posters probably in the Sparks locker room, for all I know, man, because today was a completely different story. I mean, that Sunday home game, Chris, my legs were getting numb because I was standing up waiting for them to score for like the first 4.5 minutes, Chris. And then tonight, bang, they got off and rolling in the first half minute. So I think tonight, man, completely, a complete, turnaround, complete 360 spin from the first game where, you're waiting forever for them to score. Then, Chris, tonight, boom, half minute in, you're already up 2-0 and getting the lead already going.
Yep, agreed.
Chris, to the Stars real quick before we move on here and talk about the game statistics tonight, Chris. I think the Stars looked fatigued. Reason being, Chris, they went through a gauntlet and a dogfight in Phoenix the night beforehand. Playing the Mercury, Chris, and above all, beating Phoenix, of course, is always good whenever it's the Sparks beating him or someone else beating him. Whenever Phoenix loses, I'm happy. Just to let you guys know about that. But Chris, you could tell though that this team was not in the zone today. Very, very just bad play tonight. I mean, there was turnovers. There was a lot of easy buckets that were missed, Chris. But I think, man, all the energy the Stars had, Chris, did not make the flight from Phoenix to LAX, man. What did you see, though, from the Stars today? And we know about Becky Hammond coming back to, her being back in the lineup, Chris. Danielle Robinson did her thing, man. But I think, though, this was a tired, fatigued San Antonio team, though, after that great win they had in Phoenix a few nights ago.
Yep, agreed. I think they've been tired coming from Phoenix, winning in Phoenix, and I think they were too tired to play in Los Angeles to beat the Sparks.
Yeah, I mean, you could see it, Chris, in the first few minutes of the game when the Stars weren't getting shots to fall. And, Chris, like the Sparks had on last Sunday, it took the Stars just as long as it took the Sparks last Sunday, Chris, to get rolling. You could see that they weren't getting shots to fall. They were forcing fouls, turnovers, a lot of things, man. So it looks like, man, that the Stars really were bent out of shape today. And, it kind of boiled over, Chris. You saw Dan Hughes get a technical foul late in the game when they were down by 20 already. So, it's stuff like that, Chris, that happens. But, when you have to play 2 games in 2 nights and you have a very short travel schedule, you get on a flight at 10:30 or 11 o'clock to come to Los Angeles, Chris. You land, you go to the team hotel about 2 o'clock in the morning, and then above all, man, you got a 12:30 afternoon game. Bent out of shape, Chris, and it looked like really though that the fatigue factor caught up to the Stars, and they were doomed today because of their travel schedule.
Yep, agreed.
All right, Chris, let's get a little analytical now, Chris, with some numbers here. Final line score for the game. First quarter, Chris, for the Sparks, 27 in the first, 14 in the second, 20 in the third, and 22 in the fourth, for a game total of 83. And for the Stars, 15 in the first, 23 in the second, 16 in the third, and Chris, a whopping 8 points in the fourth quarter. But Chris, let's go to the Sparks, man. They abided by the petition law. 3 of the 4 quarters, man, 20 or more points. Hey, like we said, man, 20 or more in each quarter. You'll win yourself a ball game, Chris. And hey, 3 of the 4 quarters, man, they got it. So, Chris, we know about the petition law being effective with the 20-point rule, Chris. But how about the Stars, though, man? Only 8 points in the fourth quarter. So it looked like the fatigue, like Dan Hughes said, Chris, kicked in late. And 8 points in a quarter is ouch. That's all I can say for it is ouch.
Yep, agreed. And I was about to say about the petition law, so.
No. I beat you to the punch, man. But again, 20 or more points, folks, in a quarter. Sparks did it 3 times out of the 4 tonight. Again, the Sparks win 83-62. Final game stats for the night today, Chris. As far as you go with field goal percentage, Sparks shot 53% from the field. San Antonio 41.8%. 3-point shooting. The Sparks were even kill at 50%. And Chris, the Stars bombed out from the 3-point line. Chris, a very miserable 23.5% from the 3-point line, Chris. And it looks like, man, what I have seen from the replay, because this is the 3rd time I've watched the game today, Chris, that the Stars rely heavily on the 3-point ball, Chris. And basically, man, teams that live and die by the 3-point ball, man, aren't very successful. So hopefully something changes there with the Stars where they kind of, Chris, stop taking the 3-point shots when they're getting killed by a lot of points.
Yep.
So getting back on the numbers here, folks, real quick. Free throw percentage, Stars perfect from the line, 100%. The Sparks, 90%. The other stats in the game, the total number of rebounds, 5 for San Antonio, 4 for LA. Offensively, 6-6 both teams. Turnovers, which was one of our wings to victory keys of the game earlier in the night. Turnovers for the game. Stars 15, LA 13. Sparks had 14 fast break points, and the Stars had 8. And Chris, here's the shocker right here. The biggest lead of the game, Chris, was 21 for LA. And Chris, the biggest lead for the Stars, 1 point, was the San Antonio biggest lead of the night, man. So not a good day at the office for the Stars today up there at the big office in downtown Los Angeles, California.
Yep, agreed.
Tough way to go down in flames, and also tonight as well. Chris, here's another one too that the Sparks did not do last Sunday, and that is own the paint, Chris. 48 of their points in the paint, only 30 for the Stars. So, Chris, it looks like with Nneka Ogwumike back in the lineup, Chris, she kind of reestablishes the points, the game in the paint, basically, Chris. Between Nneka and Lavender and Parker going to work, Chris, even Lindsey Harding going to work tonight in the paint, Chris. It looks like when you have Nneka back in the lineup, Chris, following her injury, it looks like that the point anything in the paint, Chris, has sort of been I don't know, but it looks like, man, it seems like whenever Nneka's back in, something clicks as far as goes, Chris, with either her rebounding to put it back in, or Chris, above all, 48 points in the paint, man. So 48 of the points today, Chris, came in the paint. How about the Sparks owning down low today?
Yep, just really awesome. The Sparks putting down the paint.
Chris, also, I think, too, it looked like there was mismatches, I think, down low in the paint as well tonight between what the Sparks did tonight. They basically, as we said, Chris, owned the Stars inside. But again, man, I mean, if you look back, I mean, you had Parker out there on the floor. You had Gruda. You had Lavender and Ogwumike, Chris. I mean, you're rotating 4 bodies that are over 6'4", Chris. And I don't think the Stars, Chris, could battle with the Sparks down low because of the height and size difference between Parker and Ogwumike, along with Lavender and Gruda. So, Chris, I think more so it's a mismatch based on the size of the opposing team, Chris. I mean, looking at that depth chart, Chris, real quickly, I got it right here, man. I mean, I'm just going to go through real quick, man. I mean, some of the heights here of some of the players, Chris. I mean, Chris, it does not help down low if you have players that are 5'8", 5'5", 5'9", 5'11", 5'6", and then 5'11", Chris, and a couple 6'4" bodies, Chris. I mean, at least, Chris, I don't know what the deal was tonight, but I think with the Stars having the height disadvantage, Chris, that's what made the Sparks take over the game. What do you think, though, about the size of the opponent, I guess, and the Stars, with the Sparks rotating, Chris, that 4-person cycle of those bodies well over 6'4"?
Yep, just really great rotating to get the mismatch, to get the bodies to get in the paint and score.
Chris, real quick, I do need to send a thank you to Tamika Catchings of the Indiana Fever for a retweet on Twitter. Chris, Catch is going to be out, Chris, for a few more weeks. She's also having a back problem. I just said get well soon, and we miss you seeing on the court. And, Chris, I mean, I really do miss seeing Catch out there. I mean, the 15-year vet herself, Chris, has been out there for so long, and now the body's kind of deteriorating, so hopefully Catch is healthy and she'll be back on the court very, very soon.
Yep.
So again, folks, back on track here with the Sparks. Again, a 83-62 win for the Sparks, a 21-point rout for LA tonight, Chris. Player statistics for the night, Chris, go as follows for the Stars. Gia Perkins, 17 points. Danielle Adams with 5 rebounds. 2 players tied with 5 assists. Perkins with 3 steals, and Shamika Christian with 1 block. And for the Sparks, Candace Parker, 23 points. Nneka Ogwumike, 9 rebounds. Parker with 6 assists and 4 steals. And Jantel Lavender, the lone block for the Sparks. These two teams will hook up again on June 14th at the AT&T Center in San Antonio, Texas. The second of the 4 meetings between four meetings between the Sparks and the San Antonio Stars. Okay, Chris, we're going to cut out here from this show in about a few minutes here, maybe 5 minutes or so, Chris. But before we do, we'll go back over to you, man, before we get to our game preview of the next upcoming contest. Give us, Chris, your final thoughts, your analysis, and your final recap of the game today between the Sparks and Stars that saw the Sparks, Chris, win by 21 and get their first home win of the season.
Just great team win by the Sparks. Not giving up in the second half, which they let the Stars get back in the game. They got together and didn't let up and fought back and get the team win by Candace Parker doing her thing.
Chris, I'm going to pull up real quick what I tweeted out from my car today because I had to watch the game from my car with my cell phone plugged into the cigarette lighter so I can watch the game today on my mobile phone today, courtesy of the great Time Warner Cable Sportsnet app. If you guys don't have it, download it, please, because you might need it like I did here today when I was watching some baseball today, and I almost missed the contest today. But, Chris, I know you saw what occurred, but, Chris, the spark plugs, the keys to the game, Chris, we'll talk about these real quick before we get out of here real quick. Chris, the spark plugs for today's game, Chris, was play some lockdown defense. And, Chris, I think they played lockdown defense for the whole 40 minutes, man. Hey, a bit of a little lapse there with that little bit of that long, lengthy run the Stars had earlier in the game. But, Chris, other than that, they played some damn good defense tonight. And, hey, that's a trend, Chris, that has to keep rolling from game to game is lockdown defense.
Yep, agreed.
Then, Chris, the next spark plug was please make the free throws. They went 17 of 18, Chris, in Seattle. Came home, Chris, and stunk up the joint at the free throw line. But, Chris, today, they botched one again. So, I mean, Chris, they're called free throws for a reason. There's no one blocking you. You got the basket to yourself. You got to make the free throw shots, Chris, and they missed one tonight. But, hey, let's see, Chris, if they can build on this and go perfect from the line next game.
Yep, agreed.
And, of course, Chris, the other big one I did put up there for keys to the game, Chris, was limiting your turnovers. They turned the ball over way too many times last Sunday, Chris. They did a better job. I mean, they had 13, but again, Chris, anything not like what we saw last Sunday with all the, the passes that were, too fancy, trying to be too fine, Chris. It looked like tonight, Chris, there weren't that many bad turnovers tonight. So, hey, you play some defense, you make your free throws, you limit your turnovers, Chris. That's a pretty good recipe, I think it might be, to win a game. What about yourself? What do you think?
Yep, agreed. Just like what Candace Wiggins says, defense, win championships.
I think everybody says that, even former Lakers great and current coach of the Atlanta Dream, Michael Cooper. Okay, folks, we are currently off track right now from our schedule because we had a bit of a problem with the Hangouts. We had to postpone 2 of them already before we got to our 3rd one here to do this. But, folks, coming up next will be the Whip Around WNBA show of record, folks, that will take you all across the league and bring you scores, highlights, analysis, and game previews coming up next year. But, Chris, before we do that, man, let's go ahead, Chris, and look ahead real quick to the upcoming Sparks game, which, by the way, folks, unfortunately is not on Time Warner Cable Sportsnet. So if you are missing the game, we're all missing it because the game will not be on television, Chris. That will be next Sunday, June 1st, when the Sparks, Chris, embark on a 3-game East Coast road trip. And they will take on, Chris, the newly formed Washington Mystics coming into the contest on Sunday night. Chris, the Mystics are having some problems right now as far as it goes, playing some tough teams in the East, and of course, Chris, above all, playing the Minnesota Lynx the first game of the year. Chris, there's a few players out there that you must watch, which will include Ivory Latta, which sounds like a refreshing beverage from Starbucks, perhaps, or Dunkin' Donuts, perhaps. Bria Hartley, Stephanie Dolson, Michelle Snow, and a few others, Chris. The Mystics right now, man, coming in a bit on the soft side. They're a bit slow right now. They've come kind of staggered out of the gate so far. Looking at the conference standings right now in the WNBA's Eastern Conference, Chris, they are 1-2, man, in 3rd place. They've struggled a bit so far, but I'll tell you what, though, man, playing Minnesota already is tough enough. Stuff like that, man. What are you thinking about, though, for this upcoming game when the Sparks take on the Mystics, beginning the first of a 3-game East Coast road trip before coming back home to play the Minnesota Lynx?
I think the Sparks are probably going to be rollover and demolish Washington Mystics.
Chris, I mean, not necessarily, man, this game may not be a walkover. I mean, the Mystics have played some tough teams, man, outside of Seattle. But, I mean, when you're talking about, playing Minnesota already, who still hasn't lost a game yet, man, and stuff like that. This team is this team, Chris, I think is built for a possible postseason appearance. They got there last year, pushed the Dream to the last game of the last game of the semifinal series last year, Chris. I mean, the roster basically, Chris, has been out there for a long time. Chris, I mean, the players I'm going to be watching, though, man, it's going to be Monique Curry, Stephanie Dolson, Ivory Lotta, and above all, Chris, you've got to watch Kara Lawson. She's been in the league for 11 years, man. She has that veteran mentality. That's why she was brought there to the Mystics, Chris, is to groom these young players like Lotta, like Dolson and Hartley, to groom them to get, to be the future of the team and above all, probably the league, Chris. So, I mean, I think LA wins, man, but it's going to come down to, how, are they going to show up, Chris, on the road? We know about the traveling zoo that was last year on the road, Chris, where they couldn't win a game with their lives dependent on it last year, Chris. So, hey, it's a road game. You're playing in D.C. It's a 1 o'clock game, Chris. I mean, it's the 1 o'clock deal with the whole East Coast travel and stuff, all that, man. But hey, you play like you played tonight, man. Again, Chris, you got you have that whole week off again, like it was again. So you have all day tomorrow, Tuesday. You have the whole week open. Practice, get healthy, get on that plane and go out there. Go back Easter, Chris, and come home with 3 straight wins. Let's go do it.
Yep, I agree.
Folks, in case you're wondering, the 3-game road trip for the Sparks, June 1st in Washington, June 3rd at Atlanta on ESPN2, and in June 6th. The Sparks will be in Chicago, back on Time Warner Cable Sportsnet. Game time set for 5:30. All right, Chris, we are going to hang here for about a few more minutes here. We're about 4 minutes away from ending the show here, according to the clock I see here on the live feed. But again, folks, our schedule will be as follows here. Coming up next, we have the W coming up, which will recap the 2 games in the WNBA tonight. We will also come out. We've got enough planned for the night here, folks. So coming up next, I'm trying to pull up our schedule here right now. So give me 1 second. So, folks, coming up next, we got the W coming in next at 9:45, roughly 9:50. We have Buzzer Beater LA, and hey, we got Sparks Fam coming up tonight too, and we'll see if we have to hand out a few more technical foul mutes to Chris and Anaheim perhaps during Sparks Fam, folks. So again, folks, we got the W up next, Buzzer Beater LA, and the #1 show, folks, on our network, Sparks Fam, coming up later on tonight. But again, folks, the Sparks win 83-62. Candace Parker, 23 points. And the Sparks are back in the win column. And right now, folks, in the standings are tied with the Phoenix Mercury for 2nd place in the WNBA's Western Conference. So, Chris, we will sign off here for our brief timeout here, man. But again, let's hear it, man. Thoughts and again, your thoughts from tonight's game, man. What are you expecting next Sunday in Washington? Let's hear it.
I think it's gonna be a great win next week in Washington, and I think it's gonna be a great game. And I think the Sparks win by irony, 10 points.
Chris, pretty simple. Play some defense, make your free throws, and limit your turnovers. You should be fine. And, of course, abide by the petition law, and you should win next Sunday versus the Washington Mystics, folks. And unfortunately, there will be no television for that game coming up next Sunday. But don't worry, folks. On June 3rd, the game is live on ESPN2, Sparks in Atlanta, Georgia from Phillips Arena, folks. So, again, the Sparks and Dream, the next television game. Sparks at Atlanta, June 3rd on ESPN2. But, Chris, I know we've been saying before we get out of here, Chris, but Chris, real quickly, one more thing, Chris. Folks, we are currently very close to finishing it, folks, but we will be launching the official website for the LA Sparks 365 Network here, folks, sometime very soon. I am polishing up here real quick, finishing up a few things. I'm trying to work out schedules for the games basically right now, so I'm actually just posting a bunch of stuff, folks. So we're probably that close, I think, to finishing up, Chris. So, Chris, what do you think here? We got our channel. We've got Twitter. We've got more people following us than we're following people. And now, Chris, we're going to be bringing the product to the people on the web on lasparks365.wix.com pretty soon, man. How pumped are you, man, that we're just continuing to expand and expanding and growing this great network on YouTube we have going on?
Very great, since what we got a follow from the network, which is from Time Warner Deportes, and thanking us for a great job we're covering the Sparks. So already it's looking great for this network that we're doing.
Folks, I know that during the offseason I said that the Sparks would be in good hands with Magic Johnson, folks. Well, it looks like this network is in good hands with Chris and myself, folks. Just real quick, folks, to talk about our growth real quick before we get out of here real quick. Folks, we have 38 followers on Twitter. We're only following 29 of them right now. We were followed today, folks, by Alberto De Roa, who is a reporter for Time Warner Cable Deportes. And, of course, me being the sarcastic individual I am sometimes, I tweeted to him in Spanish from the network. I'm not really good with Spanish, folks. I just used the trusty Google Translate. That's how good I am with Spanish, folks. But I said, muchas gracias at Tico de Roya por el seguimiento, hashtag mucho amoro. And, folks, Alberto replied back in English saying, no problem. Great job covering the Sparks. So, folks, we have grown basically from having our great fans on Facebook, on Twitter, and YouTube follow us on Twitter, and above all, we know all of our Sparks famous follow us on Twitter with the network. But, folks, we're going here from the YouTube channel we have right now to Twitter, and now, folks, it will be on a brand spanking new website sometime very soon, folks. It'll be LA Sparks 3365.wix.com sometime tonight, maybe tomorrow, folks, but it's coming very, very soon, so check your URLs and check our Twitter handle for more information. But again, Chris, real quick, man, we're going to talk about this, man, probably. We might sneak in the petition show later on. Chris, we have time tonight, or maybe tomorrow, Memorial Day, man. But, I mean, let's just talk about this, Chris, before we do hop out here so we don't keep recycling the same material here, man. But I mean, Chris, what about the growth of the network from the YouTube channel we have to our Twitter handle, now to our website, Chris, to where Chris may have had our Minty Harrington watch our show tonight, Chris. I mean, is this pretty awesome that, there's a network out there for WNBA fans to come watch? Because, Chris, we are not just for the Sparks, but for the entire league, Chris. I mean, just talk about it, man, because, I mean, obviously, if we've got someone from Time Warner Cable Deportes tweeting to us and watching us, that means we're doing something right here. I don't know what it might be, but we're definitely going on the right track here, it looks like. Just talk about this, man. I mean, we have done a lot so far, I will say that, folks, but all the hard work has paid off so far, it looks like, Chris. So, I mean, just go from here.
Yeah, just very awesome, and I'm just very nervous because what's going to happen if he, on Time Warner Deportes, mentions our network.
So, folks, we will take our brief time out. When we do come back, folks, we've got coverage of every game in the WNBA tonight, folks. There was only 2 of them, but still, though, we got coverage. We've got the W. It's coming up next here, folks, on the LA Sparks 365 Network. So, folks, don't go away. We'll be back in a few minutes.